Hi everybody, my name is Liza Mack. I am the Executive Director for Aleut International Association. I'm talking to you today from the traditional homelands of the Dena'ina people here in Anchorage, Alaska. I'm excited to tell you about a project that our organization led collaboratively. It is called Data-Driven Planning Framework for Subsistence-use Species in the Bering Sea. Aleut International Association is one of the 6 permanent participants of the Arctic Council. Our organization focuses on working to enhance, preserve, and protect the environment. We do this by working with other permanent participant organizations, our tribes, our people, nation states, scientists, NGOs, and others. This joint effort project was important for us to do because it gave us an opportunity to work together to combine data that will give us a more holistic picture of the things that are happening with our research, with our resources in the Aleut region. I'm going to turn it over to Max Goldman, who will tell you more specifics about this project. Kagasako.
Thank you, Liza. Hi, my name is Max Goldman. I'm a biologist and data scientist with Reddish Egret Ecology, and I've worked with this team and others on a number of data synthesis projects in the Bering Sea region. This project continues to be especially interesting because of the unique perspective it explores at the junction of conservation, ecosystem services, and economics. By looking specifically at conservation through the lens of subsistence harvesters of Bering Sea marine organisms, we may be able to provide nuance and find common ground in prioritizing conservation efforts among a broader coalition of stakeholders. I'll certainly say this a few more times, but we consider this effort to be a prototype of this concept through a data-driven analytical process. Let me show you a bit of what we tried to do. The Bering Sea region, including the Aleutian Islands, is home to hundreds of native communities that subsist on the globally significant biological riches and thriving commercial fisheries found within. A regional seascape and landscape approach is needed to plan for a future that will increasingly impact these values. Global climate change and an increasing anthropogenic footprint will continue to alter these ecosystems in significant ways, impacting subsistence lifestyles. But we can design a blueprint for a resilient future. This project proposes that, using robust spatial planning principles and the best available existing data, subsistence values can be assessed and integrated with mitigation and resilience efforts currently focused on biodiversity and commercial fishery sustainability. The purpose of this project is to assess the current state of spatial data related to targeted subsistence-use species, prototype an approach to synthesize and assess these data, and make recommendations for a full implementation of this approach across the Aleutian Bering Sea Islands ecoregion. This is a map showing the project area, the yellow tinted area. Communities within the project area, represented by white dots, and existing areas of conservation within the project area, the pink shapes on the map. As you can see, the vast majority of these efforts are focused terrestrially or in the nearshore environment. While this is also where most subsistence harvest occurs, these areas do not necessarily represent the places that are most important to the species that are targeted by subsistence users. There are over 150 different species of animals, fish, and plants that are regularly used by local communities. For this analysis, the goal is to select a smaller subset of species that are the most commonly used for subsistence and that constitute the majority of harvest. To do this, 13 communities were selected based on their geography and the presence of available subsistence data collected in the last 15 years. We selected priority subsistence species on which to focus our analysis based upon a review of existing community-level subsistence data. We endeavored to develop a list that is representative of community subsistence across the entire region. This needs to be balanced with the question of whether suitable spatial data exists for those targets. Not all data are created equally, and we should always be mindful of the adage, junk in, junk out, when thinking through the process. In this chart, you can see some of the included species organized by community and data source. For each species, we set subsistence target goals in low, medium, and high categories based upon recorded harvest within the 13 different communities. We use different approaches to categorize the target goals based upon the data source for each community. I'm glad to discuss these approaches in detail with anyone who's interested, but for the sake of time, suffice it to say that each required special consideration and it wasn't always a perfect process. The final input we considered was the cost layer, data depicting anthropogenic influence. For this effort, we use data from the Global Map of Human Impact on Marine Ecosystems. This data set integrates 17 different indicators of human impact into one map. Here, too, there is room for considerable honing, as all human impacts do not influence all species in the same way or to the same degree. Another example of the prototypical nature of this effort. Once we identified our targets, gathered data, set our goals, and identified and included the threats, we ran the analysis. We use MarkSand, which is free and widely used systematic conservation planning software, but the same concepts and data could be applied using other methods. Each run of the data in MarkSand consisted of 30 million iterations, and we ran it 100 times. There are two basic outputs in MarkSand: selection frequency and best solution. This map shows the selection frequency results at the medium goal level, with the best solution results included, represented by a red outline. Selection frequency describes the number of times an area was selected in a particular MarkSand run. If an area is selected 100% of the time, it means that our conservation goals cannot be met without that particular area. Sometimes this is articulated as irreplaceability. Since goals cannot be met without it, it is irreplaceable. The best solution output represents the one single complete MarkSand run that is the best. In other words, selection of areas meet our set goals at the lowest possible cost. In our case, that means the best solution meets all goals for subsistence species in areas that are in the least impacted ecological condition. Even at a glance, you can see how similar these results are, which is what you'd expect. The next steps from here would be to refine the goals and results by engaging with stakeholders to ensure that their concerns are well represented in the analysis. This is an iterative process, and data-driven planning does not mean data exclusive. As with any conservation effort, engagement with stakeholders and community members from the beginning is a best practice. Continued and increased community-led and co-produced data gathering efforts would improve the accuracy and value of these and any results, allowing prototypical analyses such as this one to be applied in earnest. With that, I'll pass it on to Lauren to wrap this up.
Ong Ong. I'm Lauren Devine. I'm the Director for the Ecosystem Conservation Office of the Aleut Community of St. Paul Island. I'm one of the collaborators on this work. To conclude the presentation, I wanted to share with you the value that our tribe has seen in these types of efforts. This project is a great example of how we can have Indigenous-led efforts that utilize both scientific data and Indigenous and local knowledges to focus on subsistence resources in the broader context of the Bering Sea and broader marine ecosystems. The project team and I are excited to share these results with you because they're such a great example of the potential opportunities to explore Indigenous-led efforts that use scientific data with Indigenous and local knowledges for the conservation of subsistence species. Please feel free to contact myself or any of the project team if you have any additional questions or would like to talk further about this type of work.